How much of what went on in the Middle Ages and early modern periods do we look back on with abhorrence and a certain amount of perplexity? The Inquisition, burning witches at the stake, self-flagellation. How could people do such things, we wonder? But take a step back, look about you, and you'll see many of these practices still flourishing today, though they go by different names. Here are just some of them. Let's start with excommunication. Excommunication meant so much more than being banned from taking communion. It involved you being shunned, shamed, spiritually condemned, even banished. Only through some kind of heavy penance, often a very public, lengthy and humiliating contrition, could you and your reputation be redeemed. Excommunication became a powerful political weapon dished out to enemies of the faith, debilitating their legitimacy, eventually just for sins as minor as uttering the wrong opinion. What is no platforming? What is cancel culture, if not excommunication? Qualified, competent professionals are hounded out of their jobs and publicly shamed just for uttering the wrong opinion, often simply for a misjudged choice of words, even just the wrong pronouns. There are so many examples. The Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and molecular physiologist Tim Hunt met with an online shaming campaign following a quip made in a speech in Japan. His attempted joke ran, "Let me tell you about my trouble with girls. 3 things happen when they're in the lab. You fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, and when you criticize them, they cry." The risk with jokes is that people take them seriously. By the time Hunt got home, he had had all his professorships cancelled and a brilliant career was destroyed for one bad joke. The comedian Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Oscars in 2018, but LGBTQ activists dug up some remarks, perhaps intended to be jokes, made 8 years earlier and had him sacked. He apologised, but his apology was deemed insufficiently contrite. The BBC unceremoniously sacked Danny Baker, consistently their most entertaining radio personality, for 3 decades for one joke on Twitter that was deliberately misconstrued by his enemies. In my own little career, I was sacked from the Virgin podcast after I interviewed James Delingpole. A blogger in Australia didn't like James's views on climate change, which made up less than 20% of the interview. The Guardian then ran a story, "Why is Richard Branson giving a platform to a climate change denier?" And soon after, I was out of a job. Cancel culture is excommunication. Today's religions are not the many sects of Christianity that once perforated Europe, but climate change, education, the NHS, gay rights, trans rights, the European Union, multiculturalism, even coronavirus and lockdown have become sacrosanct. Intellectuals of the left and right, from Polly Toynbee to Nigel Lawson, have described the NHS as Britain's religion. It's replaced the Virgin Mary as the divine matriarch. Why this worship? I suggest it goes back to the late 19th and early 20th century, when the state began to replace the church as the main provider of education, welfare and healthcare. After 1945, it was just a matter of time before the welfare state achieved altar status. Articulate any kind of wrongthink and you risk the baying mob lynching you on social media and elsewhere for your heresy. You are put in today's equivalent of the stocks while people jeer at you and humiliate you, and your career is burnt at the stake. Smear someone with labels like far-right, transphobe, homophobe, or most effective of all, racist. And if that label sticks, that person is effectively excommunicated. It doesn't matter if it means misreporting, quoting out of context, or straw man arguments, any kind of intellectual dishonesty. The important thing is to get the smear to stick. Anyone who defends the witch is assumed to be another witch, so only the very brave step up. Innocence is no defence. nor was it in the witch trials of medieval times, held before kangaroo courts of the local clergy. 12th century France saw the beginnings of the Inquisition to combat heresy and dissent. The judges were the priests. First, the Inquisition targeted Cathars and Waldensians. The movement spread. In Spain, Jews and Muslims were singled out for treatment, as its leaders sought to impose Catholic doctrine. Who are today's inquisitors, today's priests? Social justice warriors, climate change activists, Guardian journalists, organisations such as Antifa and the Everyday Sexism Project. There is no shortage of woke police. Any type of victimhood can get you priest status. One of my daughters, brainwashed by social media, leads the charge in my family. Priests and kings, lords and ladies would all make great shows of their piety, faith and devotion. Virtue signalling, we call it today. Your behaviour, your actions and your conduct is less important than your belief system. This new practice has emerged where we must bend the knee. When the American footballer Colin Kaepernick first knelt during the US national anthem, it was a powerful and, most importantly of all, a voluntary gesture. But kneeling has morphed into something else, a tool of subjugation, something you are shamed into. Bending the knee is no longer about the importance of black or any other lives. It's a tool of left-wing control under the pretext of fighting racism. Rest assured, those in prominent public positions are being monitored. If they try to avoid bending, the online lynch mobs will form and excommunication will follow. The recent spate of statue destruction shows that iconoclasm, the belief that icons, images and monuments should be destroyed for religious or political reasons, is alive and well too. In the Middle Ages, Jewish texts were especially targeted by the iconoclasts. Thank goodness today, all such anti-Semitic sentiment has been eradicated. Not. I'm walking through a cemetery packed with gravestones from the 18th and 19th century. I've no doubt almost all of these should be taken down. Nor has serfdom gone away. The medieval serf had to work half his week tilling his lord's land in exchange for his lord's protection and the right to work his own land. In the 21st century, the state takes half of the ordinary citizen's labour in exchange for its protection and the right to keep the rest. Today's conditions are nothing like as harsh as they were then. We have more freedom of expression and movement. Modern technology and living standards far exceed their medieval equivalents. But the proportion of our time we must spend working to pay our obligations is the same. What about self-flagellation, flogging oneself to inflict pain and drive out evil? Certain sects loved it. I'm not sure today if we call this going to the gym. Perhaps it's this culture of self-loathing and apology, acknowledging your white privilege and apologising for the sins of your forefathers. Then there's the unequal distribution of wealth, of land in particular. That's improved, hasn't it? Back in the Middle Ages, the land of Britain was predominantly owned by the Crown, the Church and the barons. Today is no different. 70% of Britain's land is owned by fewer than 6,000 people. The Crown, the State, and a few corporations and aristocrats. There are 65 million people in the UK and 60 million acres of land. That should be enough for an acre each. Never mind. Jacob Fugger, who lived in the 15th and 16th centuries, is calculated to have been the richest man in history, or certainly one of them. By his death, his wealth amounted to 2% of European GDP. That's over 5 times as much as Warren Buffett and 3 times as much as Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. How did he make his money? Mining, banking, but perhaps above all, selling indulgences. He struck a deal with the Pope so the latter could raise the money to build St. Peter's Basilica and the Sistine Chapel. Fugger took 50% and Pope Leo X the other 50%. Sounds rather like one of those public-private partnerships. This indulgence peddler carried Bibles, crosses and a large wooden box with a picture of Satan on top. His indulgences cancelled every sin. He even offered a progressive fee schedule, with royalty paying 25 florins and everyday labourers just 1. Selling indulgences was big business. Today, it still is. We have carbon credits, and our charity industry, with an annual income of £50 billion, is roughly 2% of UK GDP. And according to author David Craig in his book The Great Charity Scandal, the industry pockets at least 50% of donations. There was no shortage of prophets of doom declaring the end is nigh. Nostradamus was the most famous. Whether it was Project Fear in the lead up to the EU vote, climate change experts, or those perma-bears who see nothing but looming financial catastrophe, they're in even greater supply today. Obscurantism was the practice of presenting information in a deliberately imprecise and obtruse manner to forestall further inquiry and understanding. Ever heard a central banker speak? Alan Greenspan founded his own name for obscurantism. He called it purposeful obfuscation. Even Church Latin itself was obscurantist. The Bible was not translated into local vernacular until the 1500s. The clergy fought the idea that the Bible be translated. Why? Only those who understood Latin could understand its meaning. It gave priests a monopoly. Priests would interpret the sacred text and the Word of God in ways that suited their own interests or the interests of the church they worked for. Today's experts, whether in climate change, sociology, virology, or NHS COVID-19 apps, do exactly the same thing. The new technology that was the printing press, the medieval equivalent of the internet, and Martin Luther's exposure of the corruption of the indulgences industry helped inspire the Great Peasants' Revolt in Central Europe and the overthrow of Catholic hegemony. Is not a similar insurrection in place today? A silent, ill-equipped, uncoordinated majority, aware of what is going on, but unable to stop it, hoping that voting for Trump or Brexit or some other way of giving the establishment the two fingers will stop it. But it won't. There are so many more parallels I could mention. The ritual of voting, weird diets, cardinals refusing to look through telescopes. It wasn't until 1992 that the Catholic Church admitted Galileo was right. 1992! And they said even then that the Inquisition that found Galileo guilty of heresy had acted in good faith. Sacrilege and blasphemy have become hate speech. Blockades and sieges have become sanctions. Alchemy has become quantitative easing and modern monetary theory. Cryptocurrency mining even. Censorship has become, well, censorship. Where does it all end? Another peasants' revolt or great peasants' war? Here's the bad news, and I don't mean to sound like Nostradamus. On both occasions, the peasants lost, even though they were in the right. And I fear we'll lose this culture war, even though we're in the right. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it with a friend. Please subscribe to my channel. Look out for my books, and especially my audiobooks. I'll see you next time.